If you desire to walk in alignment with your purpose, to live a life of joy, abundance, and fulfillment, you've come to the right place. This is Sarah Locke, and welcome to Purpose Unlocked. Hello, everyone. Welcome to part 2 of how to set and achieve your goals for 2026. In part 1, we talked a lot about how to set your goals for 2026 and what that looks like, how to break them down into smaller parts, and I shared my personal goals and how I've been breaking them down. And now we want to talk about how do we actually achieve them and go after the thing. So a lot of that is going to be about changing our habits. We talked a little bit about that in the first episode, including the advice that is given in the book Atomic Habits, which is a New York Times bestseller from my understanding. It's a very popular book, but the advice that they give is you can miss a day because you're only human, but do not miss 2 days in a row. Because if you're trying to create a daily habit, you got to go every day. So if it's the gym, for example, you got to go every day. If you want to eat healthy, you got to eat healthy every day. If you fall off one day, that's okay, but you can't fall off 2 days in a row because then that's just creating another habit or reverting to an old one. Another piece of advice that I'd heard recently that I think is fantastic is don't assume you're somehow getting more time. Okay, so if you have what is already a very full plate, don't assume that you can add working out to the plate that's already full. Okay, so a lot of us are walking around with full plates. A lot of us have husbands or wives and children and all of the activities and dropping them off at school and work and all these other things. Okay, you got a full plate. You have to figure out if you want to add an hour of going to the gym on your plate, you have to figure out what's the hour that I can take off? Is there something that I can remove? Sometimes that's sleep. Sometimes you're going to have to wake up a little bit earlier. Sometimes it is just being really well prepared the night before. So you're going to have to take some time in the evening to pack your workout bag. You might have to do a lot more meal prep on the weekends so that the food is ready for the week. And so figure out what you have to do in order to move around the time, but don't assume that you're just going to magically find more time. And then be really committed. You have to say to yourself, I am the type of person that is, if it's your health, for example, I'm the type of person that prioritizes my health. The type of person that prioritizes their health is going to eat healthy and work out almost every day. So now I'm that person. I'm the type of person that identifies as someone who eats healthy and works out every day. And that has to become your new identity so that you show up in that way. And that's how you change your habits. So then your habits are what shape your life. So those are some of the ways that you are going to change your habits to achieve those goals.
Now, going off of Atomic Habits, one thing that I really like from the book and took away from the book was the idea of changing your environment, and that the environment is such a big part in being able to foster and stick with good habits. From my own example, when I go on vacation, I might be around a different group of people that drink more or feel free to just eat whatever I want because there's an all-inclusive buffet. All right, so it's that environment that then fosters those bad habits, and I get back into that. But then when I come back home and get back to work and my daily routine, then I'm going back to the gym, eating healthier, not drinking and going out and drinking as much.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think let's give us all a little bit of grace that we can all be a little unhinged on vacation, myself included. Yeah, I completely usually go off the deep end and, don't stick to my diet, don't work out, all that kind of stuff. But, if we're going to like, now let's take the opposite approach. How do we shift it's pretty easy to shift your environment to be like, oh, woo, who cares? But how do we shift our environment in a positive way? I think, unfortunately or unfortunately, the truth of the matter is you are generally a product of the 5 people that you spend the most time with and the most time around. And so a lot of the time, if you want to change your habits and your life, it doesn't mean that you have to kick everyone out of your life, but do start spending less time with people that don't reflect the values that you want to be living, and do spend more time with people that do reflect those values. Because the other thing is, again, we'll relate it back to health. If you're someone who wants to work out more or wants to eat healthier or wants to stop drinking or stop smoking, any of those things, if you're hanging out with the same group of friends that's constantly like drinking, smoking, they don't eat right, they don't work out, like you're still going to do all of those things because that's what's culturally appropriate to do, and that's what everybody else does, and that's what they expect you to do, and you're not going to change.
Hmm.
If, however, you start hanging out with one or two friends that don't drink or smoke, or they only do so very rarely socially, and they make it a regular habit to go to the gym and those types of things, and they're in good shape, then it's no longer socially acceptable for you to be doing those things around them all the time because that's just not part of their lifestyle, and you're going to feel really silly doing it. Like it would be awkward. So we are social creatures. We do conform to our environment. We're basically chameleons. So if you want a better life for yourself, start hanging out with people that already do that and already want and have that for themselves.
Hmm. Yes, I agree with that. But also, don't put so much power in other people as well, because there are stuff, especially with like, let's say, giving the example of food and eating healthier, that you can do personally for yourself, which is, the very first thing is go through your fridge, your cupboards, and all of that to then get rid of all the bad food that you want to stay away from and fill it with good, healthy food, as well as like putting that in front of your eyes and in front of your face and making that what's available and creating more friction between the bad foods. Because then, okay, if I'm trying not to drink and I still have wine in my house, well, when the time comes when I get that craving and I'm like, oh, I want to drink some wine, and I still have it in my house. I'm like, oh, well, it's right here. I can have a glass. But if I don't have wine and it's cold and snowy, like I'm gonna be like, oh, well, it's not my house. I have to go to the store, but oh, I don't want to go to the store because it's cold, snowy, or late at night. And so it's just about creating more friction and more pain to do the bad thing and the one that we're trying to get away from, and creating less friction and more reward for doing the actions that we're trying to implement and the habits they're trying to implement.
Absolutely. And I think that you bring up a good point. Like your personal inner circle is first and foremost your house and the people in it. So a lot of the time it's really important to get those in your house on board, or at least supportive and aware of the things that you're trying to achieve. So, one of the things I will say is it's very beneficial to have a spouse that has the same goals as you and the same values. Because, for example, my health has been a priority for me for a really long time. I like going to the gym, I like eating healthy. I went vegan for a period of time because I was experimenting with, is that a healthier way to eat and blah, blah, blah. And there were definitely people that had a problem with it and thought it was weird and think, oh, well, you spend too much time cooking and meal planning and going to the gym. Well, I'm like, okay, but my health is my priority. Like that's my value, like that's a value of mine. The end. But I'm now married to someone who also treats their health as a priority. So he's also someone who's going to make time to go to the gym. He's also someone who really appreciates the fact that I make homemade meals that are healthy and nutritious for our family. So I will say if you have a spouse, for example, who is not on board with you changing your life for the better, that is going to be very hard. That is going to be an uphill battle. I will say if you can lead by example, you might have to pray a lot. But if you lead by example and just pray over them, that the Holy Spirit works in them somehow to get them on board with having healthier habits. Because unfortunately, if you have someone in your life that's not on board, a lot of the time you changing for the better is going to then stand in sharp contrast to how they live their life. And it actually might bring up more feelings of insecurity. So it might actually, instead of, you might think like, oh, I'm going to be in super good shape and it's going to inspire them to be in super good shape. And then we're going to get in shape together. It's going to be great. That is a lot of the time not what happens. It generally stands in stark contrast to how they're living their life, and it actually makes them more insecure and they get more angry and nasty about it. I'm just saying from experience, maybe this isn't your experience. Maybe the people in your life are just going to jump on the bandwagon. It's going to be fantastic. And I love that for you. But from what I've seen in my own life, that is not what happens. And generally, it makes people more insecure and they get more nasty. So, unfortunately, that is the reality of the situation that will happen sometimes. But if you're the one in charge cooking the meals, they kind of have to eat healthy whether they like it or not. So that's the only piece of advice for people that struggle in that category. For the people that don't, if your whole family's like, new year, new me, we're gonna throw out the junk food, we're gonna support each other, then that is awesome. But then make sure that you're all holding each other accountable and that when one person slips, you pull them out because then otherwise you're all gonna backslide. So yeah, if you and your home can be a team, that is always more ideal.
Now, I know we all want us to be able to start these habits and then the next day, the next week, we have completely transformed ourselves and we are that six-pack, model looking baddie. Okay. And that is not how it works. It's about consistency and discipline. So when progress seems very slow, or and taking a long time and you don't feel like showing up, how do you stay consistent when progress feels slow and you're not seeing results right away from the hard effort you are trying to put in?
I am the queen of doing something like if I eat super healthy for a week or if I completely give up drinking for a week or two, I'm like, I should obviously have a six pack now. So that is definitely me. I think in my age and then after having a baby, I was like, you know what? Who needs a six pack? Who needs abs? Abs are for people that are not me. They look great on other people, but they just might not be for me, and that's okay. I guess one of the things that has helped a lot is actually instead of focusing on, I feel like as women, we focus so much on how we look. So, and again, it's always abs, right? It's always, and maybe this is like a millennial thing. Is this a millennial thing? I don't know. But we grew up with like Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera with their like super flat stomachs always out. And it's like, that's how we're supposed to look.
Hmm.
Let's be honest, most of us don't look like that. And that's okay. And it doesn't mean we're bad, right? And the perfectly posed models on Instagram don't actually look that way either after they have like breakfast and a glass of water, you
Hmm.
know? So you have to also realize, like, in the world of posing and lighting and all these types of things, like, most people don't look that way. And a posed body and a not posed body, it could be the exact same body 2 minutes apart and they still look very different. So those are things to keep in mind. And what I was about to say was one of the things that has kept me motivated and consistent with the lack of abs that I've been able to achieve is weightlifting. And that's because when you're weightlifting, you can see the progress of yourself getting stronger. One of the things that I feel like is frustrating is as a women, like we're not going to get like these big jack ripped muscles, which is like that's not the look that I'm going for. I would just like to look like I work out. Like sometimes I would look at other women, I'm like, dang, she looks like what I always say, and I think this is like in a commercial one time that I thought was funny. And it's like they pick things up and put them down. So like people that just like spend too much time in the gym, like all you're really doing is picking things up and putting them down. So it was like a making fun of that. Like I pick things up and put them down. So when I see a woman who like has actual muscle, I'm like, dang, she picks things up and puts them down. It's like what I think to myself. So I would like to look like I pick things up and put them down. I don't know if I do, to be honest. I think, but I will say the numbers in the app I use to track all of my weightlifting, they are going up. So I do notice some difference in like my muscle tone and like the way that my shoulders and my arms are shaped and like my legs. So I am seeing progress, but it is so painfully slow. Like to see the progress like on your own physical body is really, really hard. If you're someone that wants to like measure everything and measure every inch, that's your prerogative. I'm not going to do that. I know that there's plenty of people that do. And if that's your thing, you go for it. But I don't want to do. So for me personally, it's just like, how do my clothes fit? But then also, like just the amount of weight that I'm able to lift now, like being strong and making sure that I have that muscle mass for as I'm getting older, I know is just going to help me so much with just my like managing my health and my sugar and all of these other things and my bone mass. So as women, I just think that we need to be less focused on having like these super skinny waists with washboard abs, and we need to be more focused on like it's okay to be strong. It's okay to take up space. Like, don't try to get so skinny that you don't exist. Like, that's stupid. Like, gain muscle, go to the gym, take up weights, lift heavy weights. Heavy weights, you're not going to get big and bulky. You don't have enough testosterone. So, I think that those things are really important to keep in mind. And that's what keeps me motivated is like the fact that I can like lift so much more weight now. It just feels really empowering.
How should people respond when they miss a day, a week, a month? And like, how can they avoid well, because that happened, I really messed up, so why try mentality or mindset?
Well, if you miss a day, like we said, that's fine. You're only human. Don't miss 2 days. If you miss a whole week, that happens, especially around the holidays, especially if you're traveling or you're going on vacation. That is going to happen. But you're going to come back, and yes, the gym is going to be harder. Yes, it's going to be harder to eat healthy because you have to get back into those old habits, or create new ones of getting back into the gym, cooking your meals, making sure they're healthy, meal planning, all that kind of stuff. So if you miss a week, again, it's going to be a little bit harder. If you miss a month, it's going to be harder than that. If you've taken a whole year off of working out, like you're going to come back and feel like you're back at square one. That's just the reality of the situation. So, you have to realize that it is going to be hard. And do not try to jump back in to where you were like, don't pick up where you left off a month ago. If it was a week ago, you're going to need to warm up, but then you're going to pretty much get back into it. Like, we took time off for Christmas. I think we only went to the gym like once over that like 10 days or whatever it was. And I'm pretty sore today after working out yesterday. And I expected that. Um, But if it's been longer than that, like you are going to have to go down in the amount of weight that you're lifting or the amount of cardio that you're doing. You're going to have to start slower because you don't want to hurt yourself. So that is an example like very specific to health. But if it's anything else where, you've fallen off the bandwagon, I'm trying to think of a non-health example, like speaking Spanish, for example. I was on a pretty good streak with it wasn't Duolingo, it was Rosetta Stone. I was crushing it. Now, I haven't done it in probably years. So if I go back on Rosetta Stone and I expect to like be reading full stories in Spanish, guess what? I'm not going to be able to do it because I fell off the bandwagon. I'm going to have to start with something more basic and work my way back up. So if you are someone who has taken a long time off of something that you want to get back into, just temper your expectations. And you would be surprised. It's like riding bike. once you get it going, you're gonna be like, oh wait, I do remember this. So the things in like your brain is such an amazing, powerful tool, and the things that are stored in there, like they'll come back out. You have muscle memory. Your muscles are gonna remember. You're gonna get back in shape. That's the cool thing about life is you're not done until you're in the ground. So if you're still breathing, you can still be improving. So get at it.
Is accountability overrated or essential?
Oh, it is essential. I don't think anyone has ever said accountability is overrated.
Well,
Um, I, but it has to be someone who you actually respect. Um, Sometimes, like, if you ask your best friend to hold you accountable, like, and your best friend has the same bad habits you do, that's not actual accountability.
hmm
That's just like it's the blind leading the blind. Like you both have good intentions on going in the right direction, but that's not what true accountability looks like. That's why sometimes it is really helpful to hire a coach or a trainer or something like that. If you want true accountability, sometimes it is worth the investment.
what's the difference between discipline and motivation? And there you
Motivation
go.
is very fleeting,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
And discipline is doing it even when the motivation fades and you're just doing it because, again, that's part of your identity. I'm the type of person that goes to the gym at 5 o'clock every morning.
Yeah.
Uh,
And sometimes when you don't want to go, you don't want to do the thing, when you've done it enough times, you at least know after I go to the gym, I do feel better.
mhm.
Even if I only did a handful full of workouts, I didn't get super sweaty, I didn't do everything that I wanted to, but I still showed up, I still did the thing, I still stretched a little bit, I moved my body, and I got to take a shower and start my day. Like, even if it's not your best workout, as long as it's something, you'll still feel better.
What habits are things that you just do automatically. It's something that you have to do every day. You have to eat food and you have to get changed and brush your teeth. So working out is not an option. It's just part of daily routine that like is just automatic. We make how many decisions a day? So as many things that you can remove, having to make that decision. So if you just make it part of your morning wake up routine.
No, I completely agree. I used to do that when I was working in corporate and before I had a baby and like when before 2020 when the world was still open and we went into offices. Uh, I kept all of my makeup and stuff in a bag under my desk that I would always bring to the gym in the morning. And it made it so I physically couldn't get ready at home. I had to get ready in the locker room at the gym because that's where my makeup was. So I had no choice. I had to go to the gym in the morning. And yeah, just like you said before, creating more friction between doing the bad thing. If you can design your life in a way that you have to follow through on the things that you want to do
Mhm.
and create those habits where the gym is no longer a I should do this. This is just what I do.
When you should push through versus change a goal.
I will give an example of my personal life. I guess there's two situations where you could change your goal. So let's say you have a really big goal, something you want to achieve in a specific time period, and you're like, this isn't going exactly how I thought it was going to go. We need to change this. So you're going to be changing for one of two reasons. Either you didn't give yourself enough time. You don't necessarily have the resources, which means you have to work with what you have. So if you don't have money, you got to have time to put into something. We all now have access to ChatGPT. You can learn basically anything you want to learn on the internet. So if it's a skills issue, you should be able to learn it, barring it's not like brain surgery or rocket science. I mean, you might be able to learn rocket science on the internet. You might also be able to learn like the theory of how to do brain surgery. I wouldn't suggest you get that degree on YouTube University, but you probably could. So, barring it's not like crazy, crazy things, I believe you could learn it on YouTube. That's like a very deep held belief that I have. Um, so yeah, sometimes if you have to change a goal, it's because you might have to extend the time frame. Or you might get into something and realize like this isn't really what I want. So for me, I really wanted to grow like my real estate portfolio and I bought a duplex and now I'm like we moved out of state from that duplex and now I'm like I don't really want to do this. Like I don't like property management. I mean like I don't manage the property, someone else does it. But then it's like sometimes it's once a year, sometimes it's longer than that. Like then I have to like replace tenants and then the place sits like half of the property sits empty and it's costing me money and it's just a freaking headache and I don't like it. So, did I have goals of being like the next Brandon Turner? Like on a much smaller scale. But now that's just not one of my goals anymore. So sometimes your goals change and it's just because it's not what you want anymore, and that's okay. While Brandon Turner might have gotten a lot of joy out of doing the whole real estate thing, I just realized that it is not for me. I don't like the stress of being a landlord. I would much rather invest elsewhere. I would never deter someone else from going that route and from trying to house hack and build your portfolio. If you ever read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, or any of Robert Kiyosaki's work, he does do a great job of explaining how investing in real estate, you're basically getting a loan and using the bank's money to build your own wealth. And then if you're renting it out, then other people are paying your mortgage. So ideally, in a perfect world, if you're able to do this at a big enough scale where you're making money on it and not having periods of time where you're losing money, I think it's a fantastic thing to do. It's just, for me, it's stressful. It wasn't my thing. So that's a good example of me just changing a goal. Now, I think it's good to point out that I'm changing that goal, but I did the thing. Like I was a landlord for the past 5 years. So it so I really did do the thing. I just have decided I don't like it and it's not for me, and that's okay. I'm just gonna pivot into something else. So that's one reason it would be fine to change a goal is if your goals have changed and you're pivoting and you've realized that what you're going after isn't for you anymore. I do think it's important to try to see it through. If you're going after something and you really, really want it, then keep going. Unless you realize that there's just no way of getting there or there's not a market for it. If you want to sell necklaces for lizards that are made out of shark's teeth, that might be a very niche market. And you might be super passionate about making shark teeth necklaces for lizards, but other people might not want to buy them. That doesn't mean that you need to stop making them. It just means that it's probably not going to be a lucrative strategy for you long term. So if you are going after something and you just realize like there's not the niche for it, that's okay. Like there's not the product market fit. Maybe here's another example, health wise. I had gotten into running for a period of time. It was a way for me to escape my life that was imploding. And I started having a lot of hip pain. And I realized that like I had to go to the doctor and I was diagnosed with bilateral hip dysplasia. And so my goal of getting healthy and escaping my life via like athletic, it's good to get out your energy. It's good to release those endorphins. It's really important for you to move your body if you're going through something bad. That didn't change. It just the way that I was doing it had to change. So then instead of running, I realized that I couldn't do anything high impact. So I switched to doing a lot of spin. And over the years, I've switched to weightlifting. And when I switched to weightlifting, I actually had to relearn a lot of things because there are certain weightlifting exercises that I cannot do. And I didn't know that. And so there were a lot of things that I was doing that was aggravating my hips. And I'm like, I'm not running. What am I doing wrong? And I had to do a lot of research. I probably could have saved a lot of time and frustration and pain if I had gone to a professional physical therapist and had this conversation with them, but I didn't. So anyway, I don't think in that situation, it's not like the goal changed. Like the goal was always to be healthy, but the way that I had to get there became very different. So I think that that can happen sometimes too. Like even if your goal remains the same, you just realize like I'm gonna have to take a different way of getting there because this way is either not going to work or it's no longer an option. And that's okay too. You just have to figure it out. I think one of the biggest things to keep in mind is you really can go after anything. You really can achieve most things, especially if you live in the United States and you have access to the internet. Like you are already in a position of privilege where you can do so many incredible things. So it's important to keep in mind that you are virtually limitless unless your goals defy the laws of physics. The things that you want, you can go after. So I think it's important to do that. It's important to break that down. It's important to remember that you cannot achieve everything that you want to achieve in this entire life in the year of 2026, but you can absolutely achieve one or two of those things in the year of 2026. And you you can have long-term goals for 3 or 5 years that you right now can barely fathom. You right now would be mind blown if in 5 years your life looked completely different, but the truth is it can. So if you take the steps today and you create those habits, you can get there. And you and I were joking that, my life today looks so much different than I thought it would, and I'm so blessed in that way. But if you had told me 5 years ago how I'd have spent my New Year's Eve, I would not have believed you. And that was what you and I were joking about earlier. I said, if you told me that 2025 was going to be one of the best New Year's you've ever had, and I had to guess what I was doing, I'd be like, ooh, I probably went out for a really nice dinner, or we had dinner on some type of sunset cruise that partied into the new year. That would have been like, that's how I'm bringing in the new year. Like that would be super fun. That's not what happened. You want to know what I did? I made animal sounds at a 1 year old in an attempt to get him to make animal sounds back at me. And he tried. He tried his darndest, and it was hilarious. And we spent a lot of time laughing. And then I was in bed before 10 p.m. And it was great. And I don't regret a moment of it. It was fantastic. But if you were to be like, you have the best New Year's ever in 2025, guess what you're doing? It would not have been making animal sounds at a 1 year old. That wouldn't have been it. But life brings you different ways. And that was amazing.
Too bad Auntie Paige wasn't there to join the party.
You would have had a great time.
Because again, if you told me that this is where my life would be right now, 5 years ago, I would be like, really? No.
So you have to set your own goals. You have to change your habits to reflect a life that would be moving toward those goals. And you have to fundamentally change the person into the person that you want to be.
Yes, yes. We're looking forward to everything finally coming together in 2026.
It will. I think 2026 is going to be a good year. I think it's
I
going to be a
do.
great year
I do.
for all of us. If you are planning on changing big habits, making big moves, and truly achieving your 2026 goals, drop it in the comments what it is that you are going to be doing and changing, and we will be here rooting you on. Until next time. Thank you for the precious gift of your time. If you found this helpful, please be sure to like, subscribe, and share with someone you love. Until next time, count your blessings, love yourself, and stay fabulous.